Situation I'm seeing a lot lately when you are purchasing a home. This is only about purchasing a home in getting pre-approved when you buy a home. Now we need to talk about closing costs. You get pre-approved. How much closing costs do you have? Do you even have a budget for it? So it's about when we ask you about like, okay, so let's go ahead and how much money do you have? Do you really have closing costs? It's not about being nosy, but we actually need to know how much how much money we're playing with too. You know, we don't want to go ahead and say, hey, we're looking at a $400,000 home. How much do you have in closing costs? Zero. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about today. Don't forget to budget for closing costs. So when buying a home, it's important to have a budget. Make sure you plan ahead for certain home buying expenses. So saving for a down payment, that means closing costs too. So it's the main cost that comes to mind for many, but budgeting for closing costs required to get a mortgage is just as important. So we're talking about closing costs, down payment, it all adds up. And we're not even mentioning about the appraisal, the cost of the appraisal, the inspection. If you're working with me, you'll definitely be going through an inspection. I don't care if it's new construction or it's a resale. No, you're going to go ahead and do that. So just keep in mind with that. So what are closing costs? So this is according to Trulia. So when you close on a home, a number of fees are due. So they typically range between 2% and 5%. The total cost of the home can include the title insurance, origination fees, underwriting fees, document preparation fees, and more. So this also, when they say document preparation, that means the attorney as well. In this case, for example, for someone buying a $300,000 home, they could potentially have between $6,000 to $15,000. I always calculate my closing costs at 6%. I'd rather have a little bit higher than lower. So in closing fees, if you're in the market for a home above this price range, your closing costs could be greater. As mentioned, closing costs are typically between 2% and 5% of your purchase price. Like I said, I personally always calculate my closing costs with a 6%. I say, hey, you know what, let's just say 6%, give or take, just in case. I'd rather budget a little bit higher. And you know what? If you go ahead and spend less, then that means that's awesome, right? Okay, so there will be a lot of paperwork in front of you on closing day and not enough time to read them all. So keep this in mind. Work closely with your real estate agent, lender, and attorney. This is why I said preparation of documents are done by attorney in the state of Georgia. In other states, like for instance, North Dakota, it's a title company. So in this case, if you have one, to get all the documents you need ahead of time. Yes, we try to get those documents ahead of time. That is really, really important. In some cases, that is not possible just because depending on the lender, most likely it depends on the lender. So the most important thing is to read the closing disclosure, which shows your loan terms, final closing costs, and any outstanding fees. You'll get this form about 3 days before closing since the borrower, sign it. So there's a 3-day waiting period. So keep in mind, 72 hours before we go ahead and close. Waiting period before you can sign the mortgage loan documents. If you have any questions about the numbers or what any of the mortgage terms means, this is the time to ask your lender or me, your real estate agent. So it's a great resource for getting all your answers you need. And sometimes what I'll do is when we receive those documents 3 days prior is I go ahead and do a conference call with the lender, myself, and the client. This way I can explain all the terms. So if they have any questions or anything, hey, you know what? Anything can be discussed. So as home prices are rising, and more buyers are finding themselves competing in bidding wars, it is important than ever to make sure that your plan includes a budgeting for closing costs. So if you have any questions, please let me know. This is why I'm here. I'm trying to educate you guys because I would hate for you guys to say, hey, I saw this house. I really, really, really want this house. But then you can't come up with a closing cost. Like, for instance, I was working with a client this past weekend, and I'm like, hey, you know what? We got 60 days. Let's go ahead and do it. We can actually, let's come up with the money. Let's see what we can do. Talk to family members. And sometimes you have to let your pride aside. Ask for that family member to help them with closing costs. Because at times, you know what? You never know. They might help. They might be like, hey, I will help you because of your first home. I will help you. You know, it's sometimes you can ask for help on these cases. And sometimes people don't have family to ask for them. So, like I said, get all your ducks in a row. Get all your ducks together. And then this way, you guys don't have to be like, okay, so now what do I do? What do I do? I don't have the money. And this is one of the reasons. First thing is getting pre-approved. Second is making sure you have that money to get to closing costs. So let's say, for instance, if you're approved for a $300,000 house or a $350,000 house, then you actually have to come around with $21,000. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. This is Cindy Presgraves with Cindy's Realty Group by EXP, and have a wonderful day.